Comes right on. Now if you notice that it appears the die is cutting a lot, you hopefully will notice, I'm going to take this out of here so you can see it, on your die holder tool, your die wrench, you've got these screws. These screws, you tighten them down to hold the die in the wrench itself. But you can also tighten or loosen these, and it will, see the slot here, it will cause that die to clamp down tighter or looser. Right now you want it as loose as you can get it, so have it in there to where these are basically just finger tight. You don't want to clamp that die down. Our first cuts will be loose cuts, wide cuts, and then we'll come back out, and then we'll tighten these up a little bit, and we'll come in and make a little bit nicer cut, trialing our brake until we get a nice, clean, well-machined fit. So coming back to our original position, wrench in place, die's on. Now we start bringing the die in. When we bring the die in, as it gets to the new barrel, your original barrel, and there's no threads on that original barrel, that's when this will start to get a little tougher. And I'm going to cheat a little bit here because my threads are already on here. If I don't make sure I get this started properly, I'll recut different threads and I'll mess mine up. So I'm going to go ahead and back this out just a little bit, get a little bit of thread off of there so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, and then I'm going to, so again, you bring it in on the thread alignment tool, it engages your barrel, and you begin cutting. You're going to hold this piece steady. Make sure that you hold it into the barrel. You don't want it to push out of there. As this cuts into your barrel, you'll take it, and what you'll find is that you'll want to cut about a quarter turn, back it off. Cut another quarter turn, back it off. Another quarter turn, back it off. You're allowing the metal that you're shaving with the die to be relieved from the cutters as you back it off. Continue the process until you bring it all the way in, and you basically want to bring your threads in until you're almost at the notch for the front sight. You want your sights to come up, you want your threads, excuse me, to come up under the front sight, because the front sight is going to be your stopping point for your new brake. Once you have the die all the way up to where you want it, again, you're oiling as you go. You take it all the way off. Take it all the way off. Take a blowgun, lubricant, whatever, spray these threads out. Clean this out really well. Clean these out really well. Use a brush, use whatever. Oil it. That's the point where you start tightening these up. Tighten these up just a little bit. Before you do so, take your brake, thread it on. Okay? If it's tough to thread on, if you feel it being a little tight, that's okay, that's normal. Take it off. You need to take off a little more metal from your threads. Tighten these up just a little bit. Line them up gently. Make sure that it engages the threads the same way. And of course it wouldn't just spin on like this. You'd be tightening it. You'd be taking off a little metal. Again, short bursts. Backing off, pulling the metal out as you go. Thread it all the way back on. Once you thread all the way back on tight, come all the way out. Repeat the process. Clean it up. Check your brake. Make sure your brake threads on nicely. When your brake will thread on all the way, just like that, okay? Don't worry about if it's not clocked. We're not clocking it yet. Once you have it into this position, great. Your thread job is done. Because you used the thread alignment tool, your threads are now parallel with the bore, which means your brake will be parallel with the bore. Everything is perfectly aligned. All right, so now it's time for reassembly. So now we're going to go ahead and get this front sight back on. I like to use something like a soft plastic mallet, 2x4, something that's not going to mar up the crown of the rifle. Remember, we're still working with in theory, a precision instrument here, so we want to not tear it up. We're just going to gently tap the front sight back on there. Okay, now I'm even with the end of the barrel. Now it gets a little trickier. We're going to try and keep pushing back. I want to push back right along the stem or the rib of this front sight so that I keep it as solid as possible. Some folks will make themselves a collar that actually fits around the barrel but still catches the sleeve. unless you've got some machining options that's really not something like this. Use your brass mallet. You're going to press it just above the threads. Stay off the new threads. You're going to inspect every once in a while, make sure everything looks like it's staying in alignment. Remember, you're going to get clocked on this thing when you put your pin in, but you'd like to have it close. So periodically check, make sure you're staying fairly straight up and down. We're looking good. I'm going to keep going. Checking again. You can see here at the back, we've got maybe a dime's width of shoulder to come back against. You're going to seat it all the way back. Keep going. There we go. All right. So we've now seated up against the rib. You can see there's no more shiny barrel underneath. And we want to look through our hole here, and you can see we're pretty much lined up. We're going to let the pin do the rest of the alignment. Real good. Come back over to our smithing block again. All right, so now we want to bring our pin in from left to right, coming back in. And we're going to look at this pin. You can see that it's got a slight taper to it, and the larger end needs to go in last. The end towards the end of my fingertips is slightly larger. It may be hard to tell, but look closely, you can see it. So that end's going in last. Okay, tell you what. Let's go ahead and set our camera down, get a good image there.
Okay.
Okay, hold the weapon for me, thank you. All right, now this is kind of tricky because you got to hold it and you got to get it started. So I'm going to see if I can get lucky here, and I'm going to gently tap it till it gets started. There we go. Okay, and we're almost all the way in, and we've got it flush. All right.
Until flush.
Until flush. So now you can see through the other side here. Let's get my lighting here better. You can see the pin is flush against that side. It's flush against this side. Unfortunately, I did mar it a little bit with my punch. That's easily repaired with a little paint or even just a Sharpie, depends on how anal retentive you are on your weapons. All right, so we now have our front sight back in place. We've threaded, our threads come up underneath the sight. I'm going to go ahead and run my die on one more time just to clean up from any burrs that might have been caused by the front sight's reinstallation. Take it all the way on. Great. It looks wonderful. Everything's nice and clean. Now you're in the home stretch. Now it's just a matter of putting your brake on. Take the brake, we thread it on, and we're going to thread it all the way to the front sight. Turn it tight, and uh-oh, what's wrong? We're not clocked. You can see that the holes that should be clocked to the 12 o'clock position are now under here at about 7 o'clock. So this is where you start playing with your shims. You still in picture, Will?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So this is where you start playing with your shims, trying different combinations. You may use all of them, you may not. You can start with all of them. I already know what the shim combination is for this weapon because I've played with it. But basically what you would do is you'd say put on your first shim and see where it puts it. And in this case it moved from about the 7 o'clock to the 8 o'clock. So it came clockwise more. I need to take it back the other way. So I need more shims. So let's add another shim. I'll add a little bit thinner one, not as big as the last one. See what it does. And I take it on. Okay, we went from 8 o'clock, now we're down here at 3 o'clock. Okay, we've come back around almost a half turn, not quite a half turn. All right, we need a little bit more. So I'm going to use a thinner shim. So I'll throw a couple thin ones on here. And if you look at the shims closely in your hand, you can tell which are the thin ones, which are the thick ones. Be cautious not to bend them. They are bendable, especially the small ones. Now as you do this, these shims were custom turned to match the diameter of the back of the shoulder here on this brake. So you're going to want to bring your fingers up here and get them all nice and neatly aligned and centered. And then as you bring your brake up, have it pinch it tight. All right. So now my brake is almost, I'd say it's at about 11:30. I need just a little more space there, and I'll bring it back up to 12 o'clock. So a couple more small ones. If you find that you cannot get yours to clock and you need more shims, let me know. We'll get you hooked up. Again, I'm using my fingers to make sure everything's nice and neatly aligned. I bring my brake around, and now it's at about 12:30. It needs to be final tightened. I like to just use a plain old screwdriver, and I drop it through the brake itself, and we're going to just do a gentle, let's move our camera back, there we go. Just going to do a gentle tightening. 12 o'clock. I'm at 12 o'clock there. And that brake's installed. That's all there is to it. Now, I've left this one without any kind of thread treatment because I continuously modify this weapon and I'm constantly playing with this. I would recommend throw some blue Loctite on this, let it set up properly, make sure that you don't have this thing coming unscrewed. If it starts to back off, and check it frequently during your first outing with the weapon. If you notice it's getting loose, you need to retighten it, get it tight. Don't let it get loose or you're going to get basically a baffle strike on this front leading edge here. And that could be a catastrophic failure. You could get hurt. So you want to make sure you're checking this, make sure it's tight. If it's loosening up, get some Loctite on there and make sure you get it set up properly. One final thing before we get done here. You've installed your brake. This thread alignment tool should not be in the rifle. This should have come out before you put this brake on. If you have left this in the weapon, the first time you fire it, you will experience a catastrophic failure. This weapon will detonate and you will get hurt. This must be out. You should not have this in the weapon when you're done. Okay? You've been warned. Don't let it get you. That's basically it from Fire for Effect. I appreciate your time. Good luck. Fire for Effect, we're out.